Right, we'd like to welcome Michelle Morris, friend of Pretty Gritty, who is going to tell us all about an endurance event of epic proportions that she took part in, called the Marathon des Sables. So anybody that doesn't know what the Marathon des Sables is, I'm sure Michelle can tell us now exactly what's involved.
Well, thanks Emma, and thanks Emma and Katie for inviting me. I was just saying I'm very excited to be reminiscing again about the Marathon des Sables. So I actually took part in this in 2015, which is a little bit of time ago now, but still memories are very strong. And you know, it was an epic year, I think, because it was the year that Ranulph Fiennes took part, which is amazing for me to like meet an absolute legend. And it was also the year of the longest stage in the history of the race. So I'll sort of tell you a little bit about that. So I think there's
going to be one of my questions. Did you meet Ranulph Fiennes? Because I knew he did it the year you did it. I must have heard a rumour, but I'm guessing you did.
Yeah, well, I've got pictures, Katie, so
brilliant.
You know, wait and see. So for people who don't know, Marathon des Sables is ranked the toughest foot race on earth by the Discovery Channel. I don't know if it's the toughest foot race on earth. It's certainly up there amongst them, but knowing about some of the other epics out there, I think possibly it's not quite, but I'll let you see what you think after you've heard some of the stories. So a little bit of history. So there's a crazy French guy called Patrick Bauer who back in the early 80s decided he'd walk self-sufficient through the Sahara Desert for 200 miles. 2 years later, he organised it as a race and they had 186 competitors. So the year I did it, there were 1,400 competitors and it was the 30th edition of the event. So it's a huge, quite commercial undertaking actually. So the event format, so you don't find out exactly what the event's going to be like until you arrive in Morocco. So you can see what's happened in previous years and it's always a similar format, but exact distances, exact terrain, you don't know. So this is what it looked like for me. So on the Friday, it was a travel day. So from the UK, they chartered 3 flights of all the British athletes and we all went to Gatwick and it was just planes full of people with all their kit. Saturday was an admin day and I've got some pictures for that. And you'll see what I mean by admin because there's lots and lots of rules. You have to have a certain amount of calories. Your bags have to weigh so much. You have so many compulsory items. And then the first running day was the Sunday, which for me was 22.6 miles. The Monday was just over 19 miles. Tuesday, 23. And Wednesday then was the longest day.
Wednesday.
I know. The double.
So this is the double marathon. So you do have a couple of days to complete. So you can go straight through and then have a day off, or you could just sleep out in the sand. So there's various strategies with pros and cons, not forgetting the creepy wildlife that lives in the Sahara Desert. And then Friday, so yeah, you have the 2 days to do that. And then on the Friday is the marathon stage, just a standard marathon. But that sounds great, except for Saturday, you get your medal when you finish the marathon. But then on the Saturday, there is a compulsory charity walk.
Do you have to do the walk, do you? You can't just go, I've got my medal and I've had enough now.
No, you have to do the walk. It's compulsory and you have to have you have to have a minimum of 2,000 calories in your bag every day for your food. And you have to have that for that last day as well. God. So, you know, you would really want to kind of eat that during the week, but you have to, if you had a kit check on the Saturday morning, and you didn't have your 2,000 calories, you'd get time penalties or disqualification.
Goodness
me.
On top of the 2,000 calories, they feed you as well, I assume.
No, but nobody feeds you. It's completely self-sufficient. You have to take your own. So it's a minimum of 2,000 calories. So you can take as much as you like.
Yeah,
you've got to carry it.
2,000 wouldn't cut it, would it? If you were doing that every.
Absolutely not. So I've got a bit of a spreadsheet of food a bit later on. So you see what you think. So yeah, that was a big part of it, and kind of working in nutrition, like that was something that I spent a lot of time planning.
Yeah.
So just to rewind a little bit, how did I get started in doing exercise and things? Because I think, like, I don't know, when I think about people who've done things like Marathon des Sables, I think, oh, they must have always done running and things like that. But really it's not the case for me. So I've always done swimming, and I swam in a club as a kid, but like not one of these 5 a.m. 5 mornings a week kind of club. I swam a couple of nights a week. I loved it. I swam a bit more at uni. I've done a bit of masters swimming, and that was about it. And then in my early 20s, I thought, oh, I could have a go at triathlon. So I have a bike, I can run. I distinctly remember my training runs were 2 miles. I used to do sprint triathlon, and you don't need to train the full distance for a run, do you? This is like, it's like now it's like, oh, marathon, you only go to 22 miles. But for me, it was like, I'm only going to go to 2 miles. I've only got to run 3 miles. And I'm not going to do that more than like once or twice a week, 'cause it's awful. So, but for like 5 years or more, I probably did this. And I did swim, bike and run regularly, but it was for a sprint triathlon. I was most definitely the last to finish an event. Because of the sprint, I used to have to sort of start quite late in the day for the swimming, and then I'd just get overtaken and then be the last one crossing the line. So, you know, I think the biggest thing for me with this was I'd always sort of done this kind of stuff, but because I'd only ever done short things, I didn't actually know that I had endurance and that I could do longer events. So that kind of story unfolded a little bit and probably accelerated when I met James, my partner. So he did a lot of cycling. So when we met, he's like, oh, I'll do a triathlon with you. And, you know, I started doing a bit more biking with him. And actually 10 years ago now, we were in the Himalayas and we cycled through the Himalayas to Everest Base Camp on mountain bikes. It was absolutely amazing. But in kind of preparation for that, I did a lot more cycling, and I realized, oh, I've got quite a bit of endurance here. And the extreme conditions in the Himalayas pushed like every limit. And I thought, well, you know what, actually, I'm pretty tough and I've got good endurance. And then I started thinking, oh, I wonder if I can do it running as well. And then shortly after that, I saw this. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the James Cracknell Discovery Channel documentary.
I've seen it.
I think most people see it and go, oh, this guy's an absolute nutter. What the heck? I saw it and I was like, ooh,
I'm doing it. Join the nutters.
Yeah, so I realised I'm wired different. But yeah, that was the seed sown. And then you had to register quite a bit in advance, like a couple of years in advance for the race. So you register your interest, and then when entries open, the people who've registered get to enter. But I went away that summer with some of our triathlon friend buddies, some people that you'll recognise in here. And a few of them had also registered their interest. So there's Fiona Hoare and Simon Ward and the Blythes in there, and they'd registered their interest too. So and then when we got talking about it, that was kind of it then for me. It was like, right, I wanted to do it. Some of my good friends are doing it. This is the deal breaker. So actually 4 of us decided to enter and got places together. So there were kind of 4 of us on the journey from around here. So then it was time to train. So I entered in May 2014. But the end of May, I think it was something like the 20th, it was the day after the bank holiday. I can remember it like it was yesterday. So it was like such a major thing. But then I was doing my first ever long distance, iron distance triathlon at the 31st of May, which is a city summit in Scotland. So I was really fit at this point. I was doing a lot of training, but I just kind of blocked MDS out and did that, and then spent the summer kind of recovering and having fun and riding my mountain bike. We actually went to Peru and Bolivia and did quite a bit of biking out there. So I was really fit, but not sort of specifically training for MDS. But then September, it started with a vengeance, and I did like loads of running. It took over my life for 9 months, which is why it's a banned subject in our house now. And I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore because James had to live it with me. So kind of the training, what it looked like, we did off-road marathons every month. This is me and John doing the Good Shepherd Fell race on my birthday, actually. So we did long off-road marathons every month. We did lots of long distance fell races like that one. I started running ultra distances because I'd not done any kind of longer than, I hadn't done a road marathon, I don't know what I'm talking about. I hadn't done any marathon events. I'd done the Yorkshire Three Peaks fell race, but that was like the most epic thing. And I started doing back-to-back long runs, so Saturdays and Sundays doing, you know, some weekends Rombalds one way and then the other way, which is a 22-mile loop near where we live. I'd run home from work in Leeds with a backpack full of stuff a couple of days a week. And I used to do a lot of running with a backpack full of rice, pasta, cereal, whatever I could find, like filling my backpack up and just heading out.
Not stuff that you could actually eat while you were out. You don't eat rice, you just eat bags of rice.
Well, and that was another thing, because I was trying to do a lot of this training on not a lot of food, because back to Katie's point before, you know, like I'm not taking enough calories to sustain me to the desert, so I need to get used to doing stuff on not a lot of
on
food.
empty.
Wow.
Which is really not like me, so not a lot of them. And hill reps, I used to fill my backpack up and then go from Baildon up over the trig, down the other side, turn around, come back, and did the same sort of thing on Baildon Bank. And like, I remember people seeing me and be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, you don't even realise I've got 10 kilos on my back here.
No. And
so,
that's
you know,
the
it's
thing,
fairly
isn't it?
epic.
Because even though you think it's a desert, I was saying to Katie when we were talking about it the other day, you were saying there's massive hills, aren't there, in the desert? So you obviously need to practice running up these massive hills.
Yeah, so they tell you that there'll be at least 2 kind of Snowdon-sized. You call them Jebels, so hills, and then a few that are like, you know, like our Ingleborough and so on. I've got some pictures to show you as well. But yeah, it's not flat.
In terms of training then, because you were obviously in good company, you had a couple of coaches there with you. Did you make your own plan, or did you do something that they'd set that they were doing, or?
It's really interesting actually, because so yeah, Fiona and Simon are both coaches. John and I did our own thing, so we listened to, I think Simon did some talks, and so did we did like a like one of these with Rory Coleman, who's a coach who coaches MDS is his thing. I think he's done it, I don't know, dozens of times. So they did a thing together. So I attended those, and I read a lot of stuff. I read some books from other people who'd done it before, lots of blogs. But yeah, so John and I trained very differently to the coaches. So there was, we laughed actually at the time, because our coach friends were swimming 10k a week and running not very much. Because one of the days, John and I, as part of the build up and in the kind of preparation, we ran the Mary Townley Loop, which is 47 miles. And at the time they were like, what, you don't need to do that, what are you doing that for? And we were like, we want to feel prepared for the long stage in the desert. We want to know what's a realistic pace for us to do and things like that. So we trained a little bit together, but mostly John and I trained together and they trained differently. But I think that's probably quite an important thing, in that everybody's different. And, you know, if you carry kind of injuries that prevent you from running so much, because you can walk the Marathon des Sables. So I think the strategy, and Simon Ward had done it before as well.
So I didn't realise that. So he kind of knew what he was in for.
So he had a very different strategy of this kind of like run and walk, like I can't remember if it was 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. So I did do a training run with them doing that. But I have to say that it didn't suit my mind, running back from Skipton with a beep every 2 minutes. It drove me mad. I had to leave and run home.
And sometimes you just want to get in a rhythm and just tick it off kind of in the best possible for you specifically, I suppose.
So my approach was, and it was the same in the desert, was to let the terrain dictate. So if it was any kind of hill, walk, and then run, jog the rest.
That
rather
sounds
than
really
trying
sensible to me. I think that sounds like the way I would tackle it if I was going to have a go as well. Run where you can, and on the really hard bits, don't waste your energy and just walk. Particularly because it's obviously on sand as well. So were these hills on soft sand? I bet that's really hard to get up, is it?
There's a lot of really rocky stuff. I'll carry on because I've got pictures. But yeah, I think it is very personal how you train. But yeah, we set out our own kind of plan, really. I think with both of us had enough experience of long and endurance events over the kind of decade and more before that to feel confident in doing it with help from others. So preparation wasn't just the running. We kit research and testing a lot of kit. And for like women out there, like rucksacks, most rucksacks are made for men. And now, like even 5 years on, there are a lot more things out for women. But then it was quite hard. So I ended it with an Ultimate Direction one, which had a smaller fit. But I did have to try quite a few rucksacks to get the one that worked. And that was the same, you know, we wear sports bras and lots of them have clips in the back. And if you've got a rucksack on all day, you can't do it.
No, just rub.
Well, my friend, the Reverend Kate Botley, she did the Santiago, Camino de Santiago. She did one of the, and she could not get a rucksack to fit. She was in tears about it. She said, I've got to carry X amount of litres of stuff. She said, and they're too long for a body, so they've rubbed in completely wrong place, like on the hips, or they were sitting on the hips and they were off the shoulders. She was trying to tighten them up, but yeah, it was a big thing.
Yeah, and I'm quite tall and reasonably broad, and I couldn't get them to stay on my shoulders. And I remember, and I've got a short body as well, so similar problem. But I think, like, for petite women, it must be even worse. Cause
So what did you? Ultimate Direction. That might be
an Ultimate Direction at a 20-litre race first.
Right.
So we researched all the food and also tasted everything, because so you can pay people to give you a nutrition pack for MDS, and financially it's quite a good deal with like long sports nutritionists. But I don't know, on a normal day-to-day I'll eat anything, but when I've done a long event, I'm really picky. Like, there's certain things that I just can't stomach, so I really needed to make sure I had things that I was going to be able to eat, because otherwise it's just a waste of carrying it. So we tasted everything. We had Friday night, me, John and Simon sat around one Friday night testing different, like, those like dried ration packs and stuff. It was exciting, but we did get some good food.
Pouring the boiling water in and stirring.
In the kitchen, So I sort of mentioned what a typical training week would be. I mean, there were only a few weeks where I did like 20 miles Saturday, 20 miles Sunday, 13 miles during the week. So that was a big week, but I was only a couple of weeks that were like that. But I did run Saturday, Sunday and twice during the week. And to get into and out of the office, which feels like a different memory right now, but like I used to have to walk quite a lot anyway. So I never counted the walking. It was like, actually every day I'm kind of adding 5 miles with a backpack on, and I did take more stuff to and from work than I needed, just to get used to that as well.
Right, yeah.
Wow.
So the backpack, climbing mountains, climbing dunes. I actually went up to the name in Northumberland anyway. The beach escapes me now, to find the biggest dunes I could to practice.
Drawridge Bay or somewhere
that's
like
the one.
that.
Yeah, that's the one, Emma. And so I actually went up really early and ran up and down the beach, up and down the dunes. Then a couple of friends came and met me, and we had breakfast, so it was good. It was a nice day out.
Fun. Yeah, exactly, a good day out.
I learned where the sand went in my shoes, because I think it was before I got my gaiters, and I learned where my sand went and things like that. And just realised that having a bigger size shoe was going to be beneficial, not only because they recommend you have one size bigger shoe, and for your swelling feet. But that's kind of weird to train in at home, because you don't want to run around with shoes that are too big at home. But then when I realised that sand gets in and actually goes to the front, doesn't it? So having a bigger shoe actually kind of meant there was room for sand.
Yeah.
It had its own space instead of around your toes.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre world when you get practicing for this.
Yeah. And
sleeping on hard ground, like I actually slept on the mat that I decided I was going to take in our spare room on the floor to make sure I could actually sleep on it. Again, James was like, there's a bed here. What on earth are you doing?
Wow.
And then we also did heat chamber preparation. So at the University of Leeds, I've got a heat chamber, and I think a lot of people might know Mark Hetherington is an environmental physiologist. So I got in touch with Mark, and because I work at the university as well, so I got in touch, and he actually did some sessions. So we put 2 treadmills in, so we could go in 2 at a time. So me and John, and then Fiona and Simon went afterwards, and we did 5 2-hour sessions in the 10 days before we left to go to the desert.
Wow.
Well, the first one was actually 90 minutes. So we did this as 20 minutes running, quite kind of steady, and 10 minutes walking uphill, repeated it 3 times the first day, and then 4 times the other days. So we had temperature things in our ears and pulse monitoring. And he also, the first day we went in like this with just our shorts and t-shirt on, and then we built and added more and more of our kit. So the last one, we had full backpacks full of all our food, everything for the desert. The baseball cap with the long neck, a buff on, everything as it would be. He weighed us on the way in, he weighed us on the way out, so we learned how much we sweated during the time we were in there. It was really fascinating. I learned that my heart rate runs really high when I'm running, so he kept coming in going, "Are you okay?" But then after the second session, realised that my heart rate just runs high running.
So
the long shot was that.
Sorry, I think I met you at swimming. And we were discussing this in the changing rooms. I think, I seem to think Fee was there as well, but that Well, anyway, Fee was there, and she said, all of you having come out that chamber, none of you kind of had a normal physiology. You were kind of thinking, that's a bit strange. So yours was obviously a very high heart rate.
Yeah, I think a sort of part of this as well. I took part in some. Oh, so did Emma actually. We did that heart research, didn't we?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Oh, right.
And we had our MRI scans of our hearts, and then we did VO2 max tests and things. So,
yeah, I wouldn't be in a hurry to repeat a VO2 max test. It was one of the most horrendous experiences of my life.
Terrible, wasn't it?
It was.
But even that was fascinating. So yeah, I don't have a normal heart either. From I have a healthy heart, but one that's trained a lot over a number of years.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant because I learned that the amount I sweated in a couple of hours, which would be equivalent to kind of between checkpoints in the desert, and that was about as much water as they give you. So I've come in onto that. But water was not unlimited in the desert. It was, you got a certain amount every day, and if you had, if you sweated more than you consumed and you needed more, you had got time penalty. So you could get an extra bottle of water, but it was a half-hour time penalty. You could get a drip. It was a 2-hour time penalty.
Yeah, that's what I remember about James Cracknell. When I watched the documentary about James Cracknell, he wouldn't let them give him a drip, would he? He didn't want the time penalty. So they were trying to get this drip in his arm to give him fluid, and he was going, no, I don't want it, because he didn't want the time.
He was out of it, wasn't he?
Crazy, yeah, he was. So this training in the heat chamber actually must have been really reassuring, because a lot of the stuff, like you say, things like the unknown to do with knowing how much liquid you personally, how much you sweat out, you kind of already, you were pre-armed with all that information, weren't you?
Yeah. So it meant that I knew that, like, if we were running and it was pouring out of me in the desert, it was time to walk, because I knew that I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be able to balance it out over the day. And even if it was one day, it'd be one thing. You finish dehydrated, you go home, you recover. But because it's day after day after day, you can't be in too much deficit at the end of the day. So yeah, this was brilliant on so many levels. Not only did it condition us, we also learned about what our body was doing and things.
Wow.
Food prep. So all the food you took had to be labelled with the calories and the weight on, because they did check. You had to prove that you had a certain amount of calories. So Tesco granola is so calorific, and also I obviously wanted the most calories for the least weight.
Yeah.
So, some people will know this, but 1 gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So actually, you get twice the calories for the same weight, more than twice the calories for the same weight of fat. But then if you're doing a marathon, you just take on carbohydrates to refill your glycogen stores and your muscles. And that's what you want while you're exercising. But because this is a whole week, you need to get the protein for recovery later in the day. And because you're carrying it, actually, you want quite a lot of fat just to get calories in.
Yeah.
But fat's difficult to stomach. So it was a real balancing act, trying to work out what the best kind of combination of everything was. And I actually decided to I alternated 2 pot noodles with, like a Mountain House army ration style curry or whatever, because there wasn't quite as much protein in the pot noodles. It was very carbohydrate driven. And only in this context would I ever say that pot noodles are actually really tasty. In a normal world, I've not had one since. But I tried to vacuum pack them, and the butcher at the end of our street kindly let me use his machine to do this. The pot noodles puncture the plastic, so it doesn't actually work. So if anyone that's trying to vacuum pack a pot noodle, don't bother. Just put it in a Ziploc bag. So there was an awful lot of prep like this for preparing your food. And our weighing scales got used to weigh everything: food, underwear, tops, like everything I was going to take just kept getting weighed. And it was really novel when we finished, and I actually used the scales for baking. It was great.
Yeah, for some reason I thought they must carry your stuff for you, and you must just take a bit of water along. Didn't realise you had to carry everything.
Changed your mind, haven't you now, Katie? Well, you were all up for it till then.
I stopped entering.
Yeah, you carry all your food. If you want to cook your food, you have to carry a stove. You obviously have to carry whatever you're going to eat it out of. You have to carry whatever you want to sleep in, any changes of clothes, anything you're going to wash with, and then the compulsory kit that they want you to take, like the venom pump in case you get bitten by a snake. Various first aid kits. But this is what my planning ended up looking like, and this is what my typical days of food were. So I had my Tesco granola, 100 grams, 420 calories. I found this milk powder from Nestle, which was like full fat milk powder. So I could put a couple of spoonfuls in, and it was like really calorific. It was brilliant, and it actually tasted quite nice. Mix it in with the water. So there's your water ration is actually in your food as well.
Yeah.
And then I'd just have like a breakfast and then an evening dinner. So that I had a Mountain House 800 calorie thing there. And then during the day I had snacks. So I got this Desert Survival formula, like a powdered drink. Pepper Armies, they're really light and quite calorific. Night bars, they are the most like for 50 grams you get like 290 calories.
Yes.
Which is just
they're
immense.
not big, are they? I hadn't realised they had as many calories in as that. It's quite a small bar, is a 9 bar, isn't it?
Yeah, but because the peanut ones are just so packed with peanuts that it's quite high in fat rather than so this spreadsheet actually had all the breakdown of the kind of macronutrients as well while I worked out my balances.
Wow.
But I had some of the breakfast bars, the ones with fruit in, and not quite as calorific, but they're also easier to eat, so we mixed it up a bit. Cashew jelly sweet, and I decided that every day I would have a treat of 2 tea bags, which was 7 grams, which I was so pleased about. And I think actually one day it was like an olive branch to Ranulph Fiennes where I was like, would you like second use of one of my tea bags?
Wow.
I think he politely declined, but he had been complaining that he'd been missing out on his tea because he'd been so strict with what he was taking. He hadn't taken any luxuries like that.
You didn't offer him a new tea bag. You offered him a tea bag that had already been dipped in your water.
Yeah. I'm carrying this stuff for a week. You chose not to carry them. Second dips, yeah. And then I had a recovery shake every day when I finished. I took a few noon tablets. So I suppose the point here is that one of the things that they gave you, one of the very few things they gave you was salt tablets. And we had 200 salt tablets each for the week. And we had to take a lot. I think we had to take a certain amount for the first 2 hours, and then it doubled for the second 2 hours. So we were like just popping salt like anything. And they were saying that one of the big reasons that people don't finish is they don't take on enough salt. So that's why they give you the salts. But I did take some noons in addition to, because they made the water taste better when the bottles were getting a bit grimmer later in the week. So you can see here that I decided that I was going to take about 2,800 calories a day. I had more for the long day, but that was the kind of equivalent of 2 days as well. I clearly use far more than 2,800 calories a day. I think at home, certainly in training, I think I was using at least that much. So yeah, myself and John, I got him to complete some diaries and worked out what our usual intake was, because to make sure that we actually took enough. And the women's winner of the race, who's won it loads of times and is like so lovely, Elspeth Barnes, I was chatting to her one day. I think she had a chat with me every day because she was just so nice. And she was saying she takes 3,200 calories per day, and she takes primarily carbohydrates because her take was she could train to carry a bigger pack, but her body needed that many calories, and she preferred more carbohydrates. So where I had quite a good split with sort of proteins and fats as well. But really interesting. And she was properly racing, like she was top 10, probably like top 5 women, and she of everybody, not just of women. She won and was that high overall. But between the finish line and her tent most days, she threw up a few times.
Oh wow.
My goal was to like not need a drip and try and finish, and hopefully finish stronger each day. So there was some slight variation day to day, but not really. So now we're actually there. So this is when we landed in Ouarzazate in Morocco off our chartered flights. Really bizarre, like 3 planes just pulled up behind each other on the runway and they let us all in. And then we got onto buses, and they shipped us 6 hours out into the desert on a bus. When we got on the bus, they gave us what they called a road book, which was what our course was going to be. And it told us the route each day. And you can see here, you got like a description for each kilometres and where the checkpoints. And then you got these funny little maps to follow, kind of telling you what the terrains were.
They look like those little maps. Have you ever seen, if you go somewhere like the Pyrenees and they give you you see it on a board where it's like a very basic outline and there's little drawings of goats and things on it that you have no help at all if you actually got lost. It looks like one of those.
Yeah, when you opened it up, it was a little bit of it was a better map, but not, these ones were actually kind of useful. And at the bottom here is a little tag that we had to have on our rucksacks at all times, and it told us at which checkpoints how much water we got at each checkpoint. So some you only got 1.5 litres, sometimes you got 3 litres. The end of each day, typically you got 4.5 litres at the end of each day, but they weren't the same all the time. So actually when you only got 1.5 litres of water in the morning, if you needed that to make your breakfast and a cup of tea or whatever, then you would only have that much till the first checkpoint, which could be like 10 or 12k away, or 14k on that day. So this was what was hard about Marathon des Sables, was that you had to really looking after yourself and managing yourself, and trying to stay clean. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But it was that's what was hard. And you can see there's a couple of plates and knives and forks on there. That was the day before the race. They fed us the day before the race on that admin day, but once the race started you didn't get anything. And then the other tag is from Doc Trotter, so they had this like mobile hospital to help you, and if you had anything done they put it on the card so that if you went to a different one on course they knew what you'd been having. But I was very lucky, or managed myself very well, and didn't actually need to go to the doctors at all.
I was going to say, there's nothing on yours, is there?
No, some people's were like full on scribbled.
And then that map that you had there, were you expected to navigate in a desert that has nothing that you can look at to get your bearings, or were the kind of little footprints that you could
find? I've got some pictures actually of this as well. But yeah, in theory you had to navigate. In practice there was like 700 people in front of me every day, so it was fine.
And but they man out in the front maybe.
Yeah, so that was one of the things. So on the long day you all set off together, except for on the long day the top 50 people set off 2 or 3 hours after everybody else. But if you were in 51st place, I think that was the really difficult one, because you went from following to having to effectively lead a race.
Gosh.
But not
pressure. The pressure.
Wow. Yeah, really not my problem. But I did meet a local guy from Saltaire in my preparation, and he was about that point, and I think he actually pushed really hard the day before that to make sure he was inside the top 50, if I remember rightly, so he didn't have to lead. So yeah, tactics are different,
isn't it? That where you think actually this could really backfire if I'm at the front of that first pack. You're better off, like you say, pushing hard the day before so that you don't have that extra worry of being the person navigating.
And you get a couple of extra hours before you start as well. So I think
a bit of kip and that kind of thing. Yeah, nice.
But for the rest, the other kind of 1,350 people, it wasn't really a problem. So admin day looked like this. So it really was. They checked everything. So that's my little spreadsheets all printed out and labelled, and had to go and present it to them. You also had to have an ECG within a few weeks before the race, so they took that and checked it, and that was interesting in itself, because as we said before, most people who trained long time for this don't actually have kind of normal ECGs anyway, because you've got a really low pulse rate for a start, and the rhythms are slightly different when your atriums are bigger, so your normal GP didn't want to sign one off, so you actually had to find specialist people who understood that was a healthy for an athlete to sign it off. So that was quite tricky. See the hyperfix tape, that was my discovery of this race, which I actually have some in my purse all the time now, but it's the best thing. Like if you're running and you get a bit of a hot spot on your feet, just put it on and it stops it blistering. Or if you know you're getting a hot spot, put it on before you run. So I actually taped all my toes up in advance to protect them. It stays on in all kinds of conditions.
Is it like a plaster then? Like a plaster that you would...
It's a bit like, like the hospital tape that they put over a dressing. Like it's kind of like a white meshy stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So there's not actually a plaster bit, but it's
it's all sticky. I'll have to remember that.
So yeah, you get it in a big roll and then you just cut it off. So that's my top tip for everyone. This is what happened right after we'd done our admin stuff, which was a kind of reminder for me before we started that when there's a snowstorm, don't move because you can see nothing. So you can see here, there's stuff there, and then there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So there's some harsh conditions.
It looks like fog, doesn't it? But I presume it's not. Is it just dust?
Just sand.
The
Sand
sand.
and dust.
Yeah. Goodness me.
I know, and the tent. I've got some better pictures of the tent, but this is effectively what a tent is. It's a carpet with a few sticks and another carpet on top. So that's what they provided you with. And they don't sweep the rocks out from under the bottom carpet, and they've got these things that are called, the sort of army guys in the place call them Death Stars, these really spiky things that come off plants, loads of them, and they were everywhere too.
I'm a Celebrity looks like absolute pure comfort, doesn't it?
It does compare this, doesn't it?
It does. So this is the morning that we started the race, and here is our lovely Sir Ranulph Fiennes posing for pictures. He's a bit of a comedian. He kept trying to take the pictures because he knew everybody wanted a photo with him. But he was actually 2 tents up from us, so we saw him every day, and he was a really lovely guy, and more than twice my age. So you got to say
he's a machine, isn't he? He really is. Who's the other guy, Michelle? Who's number 218?
Rory Coleman. That's Rory Coleman, who's the coach. Who coached Ranulph and stayed with him.
Right. So they were doing it together, were they? They were. Yeah, they'd come together. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, Rory's done it for years and years and years. He's the coach I mentioned that had done some sessions that I attended in advance.
Yes.
He's very fixed in what he, ways you think you should train. But since then, he's had some. Is it that Guillain-Barré syndrome or something that made really, really ill, like in hospital, couldn't walk, and still managed to get back to some sort of state to do Marathon des Sables the year after.
That's incredible.
No. So can you guys hear my builders now?
Only a little bit, just like a bzzz in the background, don't worry.
So we'll carry on then. Okay, so when we started, the start was lined with these guys on camels. So this is kind of how serious I was taking my start. I was like, I need pictures with the camels. So stop and take some photos.
That's the sort of thing you think, well, I might not ever come back and do this again. I need my photo with this line of camels. I'd be exactly the same.
I've got a week to run, so come on. And my approach was very much like, we'll start steady and I want to try and finish stronger each day. That was my approach. This is what you got to follow on course, Katie.
Oh,
so
right.
There were red stones out on and about. So it was kind of waymarked in this way. And you can start to see
a windstorm and then you can't see them.
You can't see anything, yeah. But this is a sort of terrain as well. It was really mixed terrain. So there was some really deep sand, but there was a lot of this as well and a lot of rocky stuff. This is day one. So you can see there's a big long line of people to follow. And one of the things that the really lasting memory is just the vast sheer size of the desert. So you can see here that if you follow the people forward and then up onto the top, and you can see all the people going around to the left.
I can see a little line of them like little ants going over the top of the hill, aren't they? Goodness me.
So that was one of our small Sables, not one of the mountains. But it was just huge, and you can see by how tiny they are actually how far away that still is, even though it doesn't look far. And it was greener than I expected.
Yeah, you get a little bit of greenery, can't you? I wouldn't have expected that. Oh wow, and red.
So then that's another day. So there's just real colours as well, and like we came from the sort of distance in the middle of that, and you can see that people are taking slightly different routes. And there's like a golf buggy in there that was a medical assistance buggy. I have no idea where they came from, how they got into there, but it was quite reassuring that there was support like that.
Because like you mentioned before, something like a snake bite or a spider bite, something like that, even though you're carrying first aid things to presumably be able to treat yourself a little bit, something as dire as being bitten by a snake, you're going to want somebody that has a bit more first aid knowledge to turn up, don't you? Definitely.
And you had to have insurance to get you out for that as well. But for like, say you fell and twisted your ankle and couldn't continue, that wasn't quite so convenient, because you all had to carry €200, and they effectively shipped you out to the nearest road and got you a taxi and they actually took all your food off you that you had, put you in the taxi, and then you were on your own. So you had your €200 to get you back to a town. But I met a guy, and he was doing it with his girlfriend, and it turned out she had a fractured hip that she'd fallen off a horse in the weeks leading up to it and just carried on. But they wouldn't let. We had a race hotel afterwards that we stayed in for a couple of nights. She wasn't allowed to stay there. She had to find her own accommodation. She had to find her own flights back. It was a nightmare. I think he finished the race and got home before her.
No.
Really bizarre.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
You're almost abandoned then. If something goes wrong, it's a bit like, well, I'm sorry, now you're not part of the event anymore, so good luck. Go sort yourself out. Gosh.
So there is an incentive to carry on.
Yeah.
But yeah, just absolutely. So it was just so vast, and I felt it was quite Yorkshire-like terrain. I loved the terrain. It was brilliant, except for the sand. But this terrain, I absolutely loved. It's what we trained on.
Yeah.
The exception being that it's probably 50 degrees centigrade here.
Yeah.
And so pretty hot.
Don't really get that in the Dales, do we, so much? No.
And another one, look, I just found this absolutely stunning. It's just immense.
Like you say, it is so vast, isn't it? You feel like it just goes on for forever and ever looking at that. It's almost looks like being on the moon or something, doesn't it?
I know. But interesting here as well, there's a French flag down near the front. So it is very French. The organiser's French. The briefing every morning's in French, and you had like a 2-minute translation. But, I'm weighing out my tea bags every day, and this guy's got a flag.
Yeah. That's in his weight allowance, is it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, how patriotic. I'm not going to have a cereal bar. I'm going to take my flag instead.
John took a Yorkshire flag with him, which actually worked out quite well because we called it the modesty flag. Because actually we all used it to get changed inside the flag, so it worked out well. But it was like, we're scrimping on food, but yet taking flags. And then this one, this is one of the mountains. So we sort of came off some terrain like the last picture, and then along what seemed like a big bowl. Those mountains were all the way around, and it was just like a bit, I don't know how we got in actually, it was like a big bowl, and it was flat and dry. And I reckon it took us like 2 hours to sort of run, jog into this. And what you can't see is that kind of at the bottom of the steep bit, there's actually a helicopter and a water station, but you can't see it because it is still so far away. But as we were going, we were like, how do we get out of here?
Yeah.
And
where is the way out?
By the looks of it, going up the side. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's where we went. We went round to the right, up the sand to rock line, and then where there's a bit of sand in the middle, we went out through there. So, and up there it was roped, so you had to pull yourself up these ropes.
So it is as steep as it looks, that, isn't it? On that other photo, I couldn't tell if it was just the distance that was distorting it, but then looking at that picture, that's proper rock climbing, isn't it?
There were a lot of really shaky people, like literally hanging to that rope. But I have to say that when I got to the bottom of this hill, I just got like the giddy kind of finish line legs. I don't know whether other people do that, but the finish was no more than 10k from here, and I just got excited, and I was just trying to get past people. And I don't know, like if you do Whernside on the Three Peaks fell race, it's pretty steep, and like your hands and feet are on the ground, and I was like trying to get past people here. And then at the top, this was the descent, and the camp's kind of in the distance. And I remember there was a guy that I met most days with that distance to go to the end. And I think between there and the finish, I put like 20 minutes into people that I'd gone over the top with.
Goodness
just because,
me.
and I'm not an amazing descender, as you probably both well know, but I was just like, oh, this is just like being at home.
Exactly, that's the thing. You're right. You will have trained on similar terrain, and there will have been people coming from other places that have never been down something like that. So at least you were fortunate to come from Yorkshire, where we do have big rocky descents like that. But you obviously definitely got that thing of the finish line feeling like it was in sight, and you suddenly almost find another gear, don't you?
Yeah.
You go, I can run now down here because I'm nearly at the end. Goodness me.
I'm excited.
Down there, did a fair few people fall at that stage, being so tired and close to the end and descending, things like that? Would that be, I think that would be people's minds, wouldn't it?
There were, and then you have to go queue for dog trotters to get help. So like some of my tent mates were pretty well bandaged up for different things from falling on stuff, and and everyone in my tent was Yorkshiremen, and trained on similar kind of stuff. But you are tired, and it's hot, and you've not had enough calories. I can't remember what day this was. It was like maybe like it was before the long stage. So you know, but you've still done a lot, and you probably haven't slept very well, and you know, yeah, it's definitely the fatigue there. And then when you got to the bottom of this rocky stuff, there was actually a couple of kilometers of dunes between you and the tent, so it was a bit energy sapping. So my excitement of kind of running on rocks was then like, oh, now I've got these little dunes, but just leg sucking.
Oh.
But the one thing they did give us every day was one of these like little shot cups of tea, like mint tea. So that was quite exciting. So you got your mint tea, and you also, what's in my hand outside is you got 2 brown bags, like brown bin bags, which were for you to use for the bathroom.
No.
We haven't touched on that yet.
Wow.
We had a toilet seat on legs, and you put your brown bin bag in and over the top of the seat, and then you sat down and did your stuff, and then tied your brown bin bag up and put it in a bin on the way out.
Goodness me.
So I have a photo of the actual toilet cubicles later. But yes, tea and brown bags.
Obviously, these were only at base camp. You'd be a bit scuppered when, between.
Yeah. And this is a camel spider.
Oh.
I don't believe it would kill you, but it certainly puts you in hospital.
Does it?
And that was in our tent right above my head, where I've been sitting, and in fact slept underneath it that night. But come in after the long stage and just kind of collapsed underneath. And it wasn't until later in the day when some tent mates came back and went, made a comment about it, and I was like, yeah, you are joking, aren't you? And then turned around. And
so
I leapt out
how big is that shell in terms of like your handle?
Palm size, about palm size.
No kidding.
Oh.
So I rocketed out of the tent screaming, as did most of my other tent mates. I think Claudie just sat and laughed at me in the middle. I can remember Simon laughing. And then the other side of us had like Keith Senior and Graham Bell, so the Olympic skier and the rugby player. So when I ran out screaming, Graham Bell launched into a big piss take of me for being so scared of this spider. But they came in and had a look, but didn't get close either.
No, exactly. It's easy to laugh at someone, isn't it? But I bet they wouldn't have wanted it hanging above them either.
But the Berbers came, so like the local guys that were moving the tents every day came and sorted it out, because I was making such a fuss. They kind of appeared, and they got the sticks that were holding the tent up and just started beating it from a distance with these sticks. You know, they knew it was deadly. You know, when you can see the locals are not comfortable, and the way to deal with it is to kill it quick.
Yeah.
So that was just as alarming, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we survived. So yeah, if you don't like spiders, this is probably not the way either.
No.
This is what the hospital looked like. So they were queuing every day. Usually you had to take your own iodine. So I think everyone was painting iodine on their feet before.
Oh, so that's what the red is it, on that man's toes, not blood? That's
well, it might be blood, but I think it's iodine.
Right.
Yeah. So crazy place. So yeah, I think the first few days were okay, but by the end of the week, it was like 2.5 hours queue to see somebody.
Gosh.
No, you don't need that at the end of your walk, do you?
No.
God, no.
Or mid-walk.
This is breakfast for me. So I didn't take a bowl on the way. So you had to have like a knife as a compulsory item. So we cut a plastic bottle in half. One half there for my cup of tea, and the other half was my bowl. And I had a plastic spork. And then held up by my shoes.
Yeah, it's ingenious, is that?
This is what water stations out on course look like. So you'd get to somewhere and there'd be, a truck, and you'd go to the bit with your race number, and they'd give you a bottle and they'd write your race number on the bottle, and then you decant it into your own bottles or whatever. The reason they wrote your race number on was if you dropped it and lit it in the desert, you got a time penalty. So these were a welcome sight. This is just to show you a little bit about tent life. So that light blue row is my sleeping mat. So I think I got up one morning and maybe gone to loo and come back and been like, oh yeah, there was a lot of sand that blew in last night.
There is a lot of sand, isn't there? And that's that
what
tape
you might
on your
see.
toes, is it, that you were talking about before? That's that tape. Yeah.
I don't think that they're actually they might be my toes. I don't know how the picture got taken, but I think what you can see there is that there's also not a lot of personal space.
No.
And that highlights here as well.
Oh gosh.
So
was that one of the snorers?
Oh yes.
Oh no.
So I slept between those wooden poles, because I was probably just about the shortest, but So I volunteered to sleep between the middle poles in the middle, but you can see it's really open anyway. But I didn't want to sleep in the edges because you can see it's much lower, and that's where the spider was later in the week. So I was right not to go in there. So every day I volunteered to go in the middle between the poles. Yeah, it was, and we all sort of rotated around a bit. But the first night was one of the guys that I'd only met that day was next to me and was like this close to my face, snoring. But it was day one, and I didn't know him well enough to be like, ah.
Yeah.
But,
over.
Did he kind of go top to tail? So head, feet, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's something a bit wrong, isn't there, about sleeping that near to somebody's face that you don't know? I'd rather have their feet.
I must have, maybe we didn't work that out straight away. I'm not sure.
No.
Yeah, because the heads are at the top there, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're all very, very close. Very close.
After quite a few marathons and not washing your feet, I'm not sure which end you'd want to be at.
No. And it wasn't not just the snoring, there were other sounds and smell effects, you know. So yeah, and apparently
honestly, this story gets worse, Michelle.
And there's hundreds of tents like this. So you go out in the night for a wee, and which is basically just on the ground somewhere at an appropriate distance, you know, like all kind of like there's no bushes, so you just you get over it really quickly.
Yeah.
But then you come back and there's hundreds of these tents and everyone looks the same. So a few nights people would try and get into our tent and you'd be like, no, wrong one, we're full. Or you sort of like creeping along, like waiting until I recognised somebody's stuff and made sure that I was definitely in the right one.
Yeah, you could have done with John's flag outside your tent, couldn't you? Like flying on the...
We did, but I think it was at the other side actually. I don't know where it is there.
No.
Other days we did have it flying. And then this is what happened every morning at like the crack of dawn. You'd hear the locals, they're kind of like chattering, and I'm sure they were sort of singing a bit as well. And they just come along, lift the sticks up and carry it away. Gosh. And you can see that we're not finished packing. I'm desperately hanging on to my cup of tea there. Like, don't knock my precious tea bag and water. Come on.
Yeah, they're just like literally taking it down around you, aren't they? Goodness me.
Wow. And then in the background there, you can see one of the toilet cubicles. So 3 cubicles with kind of flappy doors at a reasonable distance away. You know, the toilet routine wasn't too bad when it wasn't windy. But if it's windy, you put your bag in and the wind blows it straight up and out the top and away. So you've got to put a rock in to
weight it down.
Yeah. So just bizarre. And you can see there, like Rob's hanging on to his cup of tea as well, and like, don't take my stuff. Yeah. But that was just tent life, and these little sticks at the front, they were what held the sides up. You know, it really was
very robust, does it? You know, if it got really windy, you just expect the whole thing to take off.
And it did all fall down.
Yeah, I was expecting sort of scout arrangement, you know, where they set up these lovely circular tents with doors in and out. Yeah.
No, not for this race, Katie. And then I think the next bit is just a few about the long day. So on the start of the long day, I mean, this is one of the other things. So the scenery stays with me, memories of the long day, and then the camaraderie. The camaraderie was just awesome, like, you know, friends for life. But at this point, it was so windy, I was freezing. And that was all the clothes that I had. I had some gloves as well, which appear later. I was absolutely freezing. Paul had the sense to have a bit of a down jacket. So I was like sheltering behind him. And someone took a picture, but I just love this picture because it was, you know, and the apprehension, knowing we're about to do 90 odd kilometers, that it's blowing an absolute gale, but soon it's going to be like 50 degrees. And like, you know, what was ahead? We knew there were dunes ahead. We knew there was all various things happening. So
it is a great photo. It is. It really gives you a good impression of what your face. You can kind of see you're deep in thought, aren't you?
Trying to hide. And we were also kind of the children of the tent as well, actually, because if the tent fell down, if somebody couldn't get the stove to light, there'd be a lot of cursing and stropping. And then us two would be in absolute giggles, just like, but I think it was the way I coped, probably we both coped with it. It was funny.
Just laughing.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
So we had a lot of wind, so we had to walk, 'cause it was so windy, there's no point in trying to run. And we thought, well, we'll run at night. And then it got 50 degrees, so we kind of then carried on walking through the heat of the day. And this is just as the sun's going down, and we find a camel carcass.
God.
And there's a lady that I'd met in some of my training races from Lancashire, and we ended up being in the same place here, and she was like, oh, even the camels can't survive here.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we're about to go into the night, and there's like camels are dying and rotting.
Oh, God.
So then this is the night. So we had a glow stick we all had to clip on for night. So this is when the navigation got tricky, Katie, because like you couldn't see the pink things anymore. You could see the glow sticks in front of you when there was someone close. But because this was such a long stage, this is where everyone was really spread out. And then just as we thought like it was going to be good to run, we hit 18 kilometers of steep sand dunes.
God.
I mean, you can see how steep that is.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
John's face. I bet he was effing and blinding a little bit.
And this was the one thing that stays in my mind was like that John's wife had said to me, just don't lose him on the night stage, like don't lose him. And these dunes were so big that when you went down, you could no longer see anyone in front, and you know it wasn't a quick to come back up. So if you veered off, this is the one place where I think you could have got lost. Because you're trying to find the most optimal way of getting up the dune. So that was either in someone's footprints or on complete fresh sand. So John kept veering wide to get fresh sand. And I was just like, John, come back, don't go that far. I can't lose you. Sarah's going to kill me. Like, what's going through my mind. And yeah, I think that probably says it all, just how steep that was. And 18 kilometers of it. So it's nearly a half a marathon when you've already done, I don't even know how far we'd already gone, like 20 miles, 30 miles or something. So yeah, it was epic.
Yeah.
We did stop to have like tea part way around, and you know, I think I'm smiling quite a lot probably for how I was feeling. But this is not long before some kind of like white scorpion just ran through that tent, and I got out of there so fast, you know, like any achy legs were gone. I was like, ping, gone. And I had one shoe on, and I was like hopping out across the some people were just too tired, they didn't even move. So I just remember this one guy literally just like laying there half in a sleeping bag with this thing like crawling up his legs.
Oh,
so
it's making me go all funny. I don't like the sounds of that at all.
No,
what's the temperature like in the dark at night? Does it drop a lot?
Yeah, it did get down to freezing.
Did it?
Yeah.
It's just a crazy place, isn't it, that you can have that huge difference between daytime temperature and nighttime temperature, and in terms of what to wear and stuff. It makes it so much more difficult, doesn't it, the difference there? Yeah, so I took a silk liner and quite a lightweight sleeping bag, and it wasn't that cold every night, but I think I only woke up a couple of times feeling cold. And it was only for a couple of hours, you know, that really cold bit. Yeah.
There is a balance. So I can see why people would take like a light down and a sleeping bag, but then you've got to carry it.
Yeah. Does the heat come out the sand on the night? Is there a kind of a radiation effect of, or is that not at all? No.
I didn't really notice. But yeah, I don't remember actually. And then the best thing about that stage was the sun coming up. So this is probably the only one of the very, very few times I can remember saying, like, I knew I was going to finish that day. Like, there was never a doubt I was going to finish it. But I remember saying, like, I don't actually know how I'm going to get to the finish. Because in hindsight, I think I had a bit of a hyponatremia thing going on here, you know, when all the salt gets pulled out.
Yeah.
Because I had this pain that started in my ankles and it just moved up through my legs, like a pain like I've never had in anything else I've done. Not like you know, like a DOMS pain or anything, just this really, you know, all the way up through my legs. And then my hands swelled up, not like fat hands from a long walk on a hot day, like balloons. And they were like so big, they were like bursting out little blood blister things. And I knew I needed more salt and less water. And I think in hindsight, I just kept drinking the same amount through the night and I didn't need it. But you're in this habit. I'm in the desert. I need to drink everything they give me. I was popping salt tablets like I don't know what. Every opportunity I had to sit down. And John just kept saying, the sun will come up and we'll feel better. The sun will come up and we'll feel better. So this is just as daylight came. So I've got my gloves on and I've got my buff up and my like thermal top tucked up over my number, because if you cover your number up, you got a 30-minute time penalty. So, you know, like, you're trying not to break the rules while you, and I think we had about 5k to go here. And this is like a weird camel racetrack. It was quite a surreal thing to be on, like what was a bit like Harvey's Gallops in the middle of the desert after all that in the night. And, you know, when you're like, is this for real? And then we finished that day, and it was great. I think we did it in about 23 hours, so we went straight through.
Did you?
Tried to get some sleep. I put my legs up on my bag and tried to get some sleep, but my legs just hurt so much. I ended up just getting up and sitting on the finish line and watching other people come in that day. But I actually rang home that day, and I remember, because I didn't take a phone or anything, but I used like they had like a communications tent, so you could go and pay to use a phone. I remember saying to James, like, I am in more pain than I've ever been in before, but I know I'll be fine tomorrow. So you thinking back, and I made some, like, a little bit of a diary in it as well. It was like, this is like the worst thing ever, but 24 hours later, it's like I've got a whole 24 hours, so I've got to go again.
It's mad,
and then it was the marathon.
Yeah, but James was thinking, well, he must just think you're crackers, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think they were tracking, and I think, you know, you could see that me and John were mostly sticking together, and that, you know, that things were progressing as we should. And I think the first day that all 8 of us in our tent finished within about 10 minutes. And then on this marathon day, I think there's probably like 7 hours between us.
I suppose it would depend on what tactic people had chosen, because I know you were saying some people chose maybe to break it in half and have a proper big rest in the middle. So I suppose depending on whether you try and keep pushing all the way through or not would make a big difference to what time you finished that day, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then, like, half of the tent, they slept out in the dunes, but I was already telling you about the scorpions and the spiders. There's no way. I don't know why I thought the tent was any safer. It's just a bit of carpet, isn't it? But there was no way.
It's a psychological thing, though. You're in a tent. It seems safer.
Yeah. So when we had a rest day, we were granted a can of Coke that day from the race, which was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And we woke up on the Friday, and it was marathon stage. So it was only a marathon, and it was actually really runnable. It was probably the most runnable day. And 3 of us ran together, and we had a really good laugh. And it was really strange terrain, but runnable until we hit these dunes here. And I think this is probably a point where we had a bit of a conversation about sticking together or doing our own thing, and we decided to do our own thing for the last, I don't know, 5 miles or something. And it was a good thing, because it was a real, like, reflective time. So I remember going through these dunes, and that's when emotion hit, and I actually thought, you know, I'm doing this.
Wow.
I'm actually doing it. And you know, and those dunes were really beautiful and red, and, you know, hard underfoot, but you were so close to the end that it was just like, oh, look at these dunes. And it was really magical. And we got to see wild camels.
God.
Just, you know, a bit like
dark. They're like almost black, aren't they? I thought they were really light coloured camels, but I haven't met many camels, so I don't know.
Well, these are dark. So what's that feeling, though? Is this like going through a field of cows? Or are these camels going to be okay?
Yes. Yeah. And did they move, or did they just stand and watch it?
Pretty chilled, yeah. There was a bit of a watering thing there, like an old well, so I think that's why they were gathering. But again, it was like, oh, I might be running a marathon, but I'm just seeing a picture of some camels. And then at the end, you cross the line and get your medal. And then after the medal, you sort of step back, and Patrick, the French guy that organised it, gave everyone a kiss. You know, French style, both cheeks. So it was a bit of an iconic thing.
So wow, 1,400 kisses.
Yeah, well, it's a lot.
They do outside, yeah.
So yeah, it was double. So I did manage to run quite a strong 5k at the end, actually. And I think my marathon was about, I think it was 6 hours 20 or 6 hours 40 or something, but it was the highest finish that I'd had all week up the field. I don't know if I was like 400th or something.
Very good.
So I can't remember, actually. It might not have been that, but it was my highest one, and it was like well inside the top half. And I was just pleased that my plan had worked, that I'd look after myself until the end. And then I mentioned the camaraderie. So like after that, we were in the tent, and the tent just collapsed. This happened at many occasions during the week, but it was funny because we'd finished at this point. And like you can see here that Ben had just caught the big pole, and as it came down, because if that had hit you, it would have hurt.
I was going to say, you know, like you need anything else to harm you or injure you. Here, whack yourself on the head with this big log.
And there's a bandaged leg there from falling over as well. So, you know, it was just hilarious. And we got a beer on the last day. So we waited for everyone in our tent to finish. So this was the day when I think there was 7 hours between us, because it was getting a bit like, oh, where are they? You know, like, this is like the difference between the first one in was maybe quite close to 6 this day, and then, you know, it's 7 hours until the last of our tent in. But everyone finished, so that was really excellent and in reasonable shape, and we got our beers, and then we were all given a t-shirt to do the charity walk, and we walked it as a tent. So this is our tent crossing the finish line.
So good.
It's all emotional now, it's just looking at it.
Like you say, they are the sorts of people that you keep as friends for life, because I think if you've experienced something like that together, you're never going to forget that, are you?
No, and it's weird as well, because afterwards I've learned a lot more about people afterwards, and, you know, what people do for jobs and things like that. But, you know, when you were out there, it really didn't matter, because we all had the same amount of stuff, the same kit. You were just looking after each other and doing the best that you could together. And
so of that tent then, have any of you decided that you would be mad enough to do it again, or a reunion?
Yeah, I would do it again in a heartbeat if someone else paid this time. It's quite an expensive race. And so we did, a couple of years later, there were a few of us that kind of hovered over press and go again.
Really?
Because I did have a bit of a thing afterwards of like, well, I did this to kind of like in a preservation mode. I didn't want to drip or anything. So I did have a bit of a period where I was like, oh, what could I do if I actually ran? You know, like if I did run so that I was, you know, to a point where I might be sick at the end of the day, knowing now that I'll probably recover. Whereas the first time around, I was like, well, I don't want to be ill. I don't want to be shipped home. Like,
that's why these things are addictive, though, because I think everybody, this is obviously of epic proportions, but any race, I think afterwards you analyse it and go, could I have gone a bit harder? Could I have gone a bit quicker than that? So I can imagine you do the same.
That's the experience, taking away what you know and what you can implement next time.
Yeah.
But amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely a really good insight. And rationed water and carrying your own food and scorpions running across.
It's great, isn't it?
We haven't really touched on toileting and washing either. No. But you can see there was not a lot of space. There was one cubicle on the camp that women could go in to get changed.
Right.
And wash, but ultimately it was a bit, I think it was 250 women. You know, I think I went in there the first day or two, and then after that we had the modesty flag.
Yeah, and, you made do with that.
And in my head the tent had sides, and you just so you had to kind of look after yourself, because you didn't want chafing or anything else going on. And
once you've seen a bare bottom, and you kind of go, oh, it's fine, I'm just going to get undressed here.
No, it's terrible. And the other thing I learned very quickly was with a full backpack, so your backpacks had to be 6.5 kilos minimum, and I think there was a max of about maybe 15. So mine was 8, just over 8 without water. So, you know, I was getting on for 10 with my water. But before the race started, I went and had a wee, crouched down. Could I hell get back up? 10 kilos on my back in that crouched position. You remember me, like, I am now stuck with my pants down. With like 1,300 people over here gathered for the start. I'm sure there was a helicopter above because it was the start. And I was like, I can't go. I should have been doing your strength and conditioning before I went, Emma.
Yeah, that's it. That would have stood you in good stead. Oh, well, that was brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm sure anybody listening to it will find that really, really inspirational. It's just a heck of an achievement, and something that I think, like you say, even if you never go back and do it again, I think that would be the worry for me. I think when you've had such an amazing experience, if you went back, I would always worry that it wouldn't be the same, because they're not the same people that you're going to be with, and it might not be as good for whatever reason. But I think it's something that definitely will stay with you forever, won't it?
Absolutely.
And
Simon left 15 years. So I think when I did it, I was probably a similar age to when he did it the first time. So I think, you know, I've got another 10 years. I think that's probably quite a good...
Yeah, well, you never know. Katie and I might come with you when you do it in 10 years' time. You have to promise no scorpions. I'm not coming in that tent if you've got scorpions and big spiders, though.
Yeah, and we didn't see snakes, but they're apparently out there.
Yeah. Oh, I bet they are. Yeah, I bet they are.
Yeah. But no, it's epic.
Thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I would say definitely if people think that it's something that they might like to do, I would say definitely do it, because you can train for it and you can walk it. You've just got to go quicker than the camel at the back, which I think is like 2 or 3 kilometers an hour, which sounds very slow, but it's in those conditions it really isn't.
No. And I suppose, like you said at the beginning, from actually expressing an interest and entering the event to actually physically going and doing it, there's always going to be quite a chunk of time. So it's not like you're going to only have a short amount of time to train for it. I suppose once you've committed to it, how long did you have from did you say, from entering to?
About a year, just under a year for me. But yeah, I did about 9 months of committed training.
But you were starting from a fairly fittish level as well, weren't you?
Yeah.
But,
But never say never, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
and get it on the bucket list and go and do it.
Yeah, I think, there's so much more to it than the running. I think the running is the running you can train for. It's the rest of the stuff that's tough. I think the care and the preparing and carrying and looking after yourself. But yeah, overall, just an awesome experience.